Great. So you've joined the 7 Bills of Business Development. If that's not what you were expecting, then you're in the wrong place. But we still hope that you hang around and maybe learn something and gain some valuable insight. If this was what you were expecting, then welcome. I say we, but really Bruce has found all the references to ducks and duck bills and billables and all the bills that you could possibly come up with and put them all into one PowerPoint presentation. So we've had a lot of fun with the metaphor that we can use here. And I definitely think that this image is stuck with a lot of people and who've spoken to me about this webinar and what was coming up. So we're going to tackle what the 7 Bills of Business Development are today. I just want to introduce a little bit about who we are and what we do and the people whose faces you see. So we are Entrepreneur and Management Solutions. We just call ourselves EM Solutions. And we provide, as it says there, consulting, coaching, accompaniment, and advisory. We specifically work with the nonprofit sector, and we focus on income generation through business activities. So supporting organizations to develop that form of income. We do that because I have nearly 2 decades of experience in the nonprofit sector. I have been working with the sector to improve sustainability and governance and financial management over that period, and really do have a passion for the sector. And Bruce is a business coach. He has 15 years of experience working with businesses and owning a few, running a few. He's even started a nonprofit organization, so he does understand the context that we're working with. But we are able to bring both viewpoints and both mindsets to the conversation, where we're looking at it from a nonprofit point of view as well as from a business perspective. So we can merge those two and bring you an offering and a way of thinking that hopefully connects with the majority of people who are here. So that gives you a little bit of an outline of who we are. As I mentioned before, we started, we'll have a slide at the end that shows you how you can connect with us and the ways that we interact with people. And I have already put up the Facebook group where we'll be posting the recording of this video, this webinar, as soon as we have finished editing it. No guarantees on time. To get started, we need to look at our ducks and trying to get our ducks in a row. This lockdown period, this COVID-19, has had a huge impact on the nonprofit sector. I think there have been many short-term campaigns that have been able to raise funds, but there is also a longer-term knock-on effect on income, and particularly donor income, and how that will outwork itself going forward into the donor sector and the donor environment. I think some of you have already found that donors have either committed less money than you anticipated, or have rediverted funds that was intended for your project area to COVID emergency funding and COVID-related support, such as PPE and feeding schemes and so forth. So we've seen already that there is an impact on particularly donor funding. We also see that organizations really struggle to be sustainable and to have reliable sources of income in the long run. You know, you often start with one big donor. National Lottery seems to be a great sponsor of startup organizations, and then that donor falls away and the organization is forced to close because there's not a consistent source of income that is reliable and not dependent on the decisions of donor organizations. particularly we find that the focus areas of donors shifts. And there was a few years ago a big thing about, AIDS. Then there was a big one about environmental issues. And so we have this fluid donor environment that is very difficult to continue to engage with the same donors for an extended period of time. So all of that is to say that it has become more and more evident over time that organizations need a sustainable income source that they are able to control, that they have greater level of decision making around, and that they can then utilize as they desire, because that's the other big challenge when it comes to funding, is that it's very specific to the project that you applied for or the cause that the donor wants to support. It doesn't cover the running costs, the call costs, the things that you really needed to cover. And so this is how we've got into looking at business activities and why we see that there is such a need in the sector for generating income through some kind of business activity in order to be able to plan strategically, to be able to employ additional people and expand and fund those strategic initiatives that will take you to the next level as an organization. And so that kind of hopefully helps you to identify why it is such a topical conversation to be having now, and why we have really committed to this field as consultants, to see that it is so important to have that source of income available to you. And it often starts small, but really what we want to see is that it grows into something sustainable. So we have categorized the income generating opportunities in 3 ways. And this helps us to really be on the same page with our clients around what it is that we're talking about. How do we do this? What is it that what we mean? And the first one there is looking at charging for existing activities. So this is where you have workshops that you put on for your beneficiaries, maybe a program or something like that. And then you find a alternative source of customer base. So typically you'll charge corporates to put on your workshops, and you get some source of income based on what you're already doing. This often is quite small, and people tend to do that as a sort of a side thing. When somebody wants their workshop, then they come and put it, to do that. But it's not often that organizations take it to the next level by committing to market it and really to use that intellectual property that they have to make a significant contribution towards the income of the organization. The second business type that we look at is where you are creating a business for the beneficiaries as a means of outworking the organization's objective. And so what we mean by this is typically you will find that certain types of organizations have beneficiaries that they work with who are able to contribute to society and to the organization, and are able to be employed in some kind of format. And there's a need there for economic stability within that demographic. I see we have a number of people here who work with people with disabilities, and that's a prime example of a demographic who are able to work to create something, to build something that is a product that can be sold. And so often we'll see an organization creating a business arm that utilizes the skills and the talents and the resources that their beneficiaries have on hand. So they take that product that the beneficiaries produce and on-sell it. Typically, they become then an access to market for those groups. So that's the kind of business that we're talking about there. And then finally, the last type of business is where we start something to make a profit for the organization. It has no connotation, connection to the primary objective of the organization, but is merely a means of creating income to support that objective of the organization. And we see this a lot with charity shops and those sort of outlets where the profits of those shops are then used for the benefit of the organization. And they're used also for awareness raising and fundraising campaigns of the organization, as the shops often get well known, and you can then sort of promote the organization through that business activity. But it's not really feeding into the programs and the way that the programs work of the organization. This also works with rental properties. People do that, where they have a property and they rent it out, where they're getting some income in relation to the business, just to support the organization itself. So when we talk about a business, we are not talking in sort of narrow terms, quite broad. And it might apply, one of these might apply to you, or a multitude. And so we really hope that you can see within your organization at least some way that one of these would apply and be something that you could look to engage with. Okay, so that gives you a context of the conversation that we're having and the sort of framework that we're working within. The next part is where we're going to really dive now into the 7 bills of business development. And I think, if I'm not correct, Bruce, were you going to introduce this part?
Yep.
And then I will do the first one. Okay. Great, I'll hand over to you.
Good, lovely. Thank you very much, Michelle. So welcome to developing a business. And often the mindset of people who work in NPOs are very NPO focused, because that's why you're there. And to come and start paradigm shifting is often a hard thing. And you cannot run a business for profit with a mindset of a non-profit. So what we've done, we've broken it down to a couple of checklists or bills. So there's a bit of play on words. Give us a little credit of a creative license here as we play around with the ducks and the bills, and you'll see how it all kind of falls together. So what we've done, we've put together 7 different areas or checkpoints that we're going to ask you just to kind of score yourself on a little bit as we go there. So we're going to score yourself out of like 1 to 5, 1 being like, flip, first time I've heard of this, I haven't thought about it, up to 5 to say we've got this sorted and we're A for away. So we're going to ask you to do some scoring on that. So the first bill is the Gira bill, and this is all the technical stuff that I know very little about. So Michelle's going to quickly chat to us about these 5 points.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. As I said, we merge our 2 skill sets very well, and you have to start with the organization before you can start looking at a business. And so when it comes to organization conversations, I'm the one who takes that lead. So this is where we're looking to see, are you geared for a business? Are you gearable? See? Gearable. Please note the emphasis. When we look at the organization, are you structured in a way that actually will be able to support a business operation? And there are some organizations who find that they are not, and so we really need to start there. The first thing we're looking at is saying, okay, how are you incorporated? What are your founding documents? Are there any restrictions within your founding documents that won't allow you to engage with the business opportunities? Are there any ways that we need to look at that? And I just want to mention very briefly, when it comes to things like income tax exemption, people say to me, oh, I'm not allowed to run a business. And that's not true. There are some very broad categories where you are allowed to run a business, and then if your business goes beyond those categories, you may pay a small amount of tax on the profit of the business. But paying that tax is definitely worthwhile for the income that you will get for that business. So I've done a white paper, and we've done various other presentations on this topic. So please have a look on our website and on the Facebook page, or drop me an email if you'd like to know more about that. So the first starting is to say, are you structured in a way? Are there any limitations that you've placed on yourselves? What is it that you do in terms of a founding statement? What is your objective? Does it incorporate something that would be able to be income generating for you? Another consideration is looking at your board. Also, the will of the board to support income generating activities, and then the skill set that is available on the board to support that, the actual practical implementation. We find, as Bruce has already mentioned, the mindset, you need to have sort of a dual mindset when it comes to being able to run a business. And often business people on your board are a very valuable resource for supporting that kind of initiative. And then looking at the staff experience, we're looking at and the network. Who do you have that you can really access in terms of experience in running a business, maybe experience in developing a product? One of former clients, they employed a person who was a marketing manager in his previous life, and he really revolutionized their business because he had that experience that he could bring to the table. So looking at to see what resources you have around you in the people that are in your organogram, and how are you able to utilize that and to gear that for running a business. So that's always your starting point. Who are you and how are you structured that will support this kind of initiative? Bruce, I think it's over to you for number 2.
Okay, so here's a quick snap survey. If you know that you are geared for business and you're happy with that, put a 5 in the comments. If you're going, flip, I have no idea, what are founding documents, where's my purpose statement, and what, you need a board, then put a 1 or anything else in between there. So just quickly zap a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how you rate yourself as being gearable for starting a business. Okay, we got a couple of 5s there. That's good. We'd love to chat to you. We love 5s. A little afraid of 1s. The 1s go to Michelle. I'll take the 5s. Okay, brilliant.
I'm not afraid to support people from the beginning all the way through.
So that's brilliant. So the first one there is, are you gearable? And often you've just got to go back to those roots and finding those ones. The next one is plausible. How plausible are your business ideas? And this is an interesting one there, because often we have ideas and we've come across some brilliant ideas. We've also come across some, to be polite, not so brilliant ideas. And it's interesting there is that you've got to look at this plausibility setup of your idea. So you've got to kind of do, we've got a lovely tool, we just call it our NPO environmental analysis. And we come in and we kind of look at the region. We do a helicopter view, we zoom down, we look at this, we interview the locals in and around your area. We look at what the opposition is, where those opportunities, what are the risks, and analyze those, because we're going to take those ideas. And the first tick box that we want to do in this section is that, are your ideas going to work? Are they plausible? And if they're not, like if you want to start a jumping castle company and you don't have space and you don't have transport and you don't have any jumping castles, then it might not be a plausible idea. If you're going to start a feeding scheme and you don't have electricity or gas or water, then it's not a plausible idea. But often we sit there and we find this is where we start peeling back and we're finding those unutilized resources, which we will come to a little later. So at the end of this section here, plausibility gives us kind of three things: a list of possible ideas, and we also then do a list of opportunities, which are unexplored future places of wealth. And then we also identify the wonderful list of threats, the ones we need to manage and mitigate in order not to get caught by them. So as soon as you identify those, we're able to move forward and sit there and say, hey, we've got plausible ideas that maybe if we put a little effort into it, we could then turn it into an income generating idea. So here's a quick quiz again. I love Cornelia's 5, 4, and 3. Okay, so here's a broad one. Hedge your bets there. If you've got some solid ideas that you could utilize in your business, give us a 5. If you are completely clueless, and it's okay to be clueless here because that's why you're here, then give us a 1. If you've got some ideas, we've got some ideas, or maybe you've tried some ideas, give us a 3 or 4. Depends on how that is. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to do that. All right, so we've got some ideas. That's brilliant. Okay, Fiona, some 3, some 4s. Okay, so some 4, 6 and 7. Oh, we'd like to chat to you. Okay, brilliant ideas that are working already. Maybe you should teach this in longer. You're doing well. So we've got some ideas. We've got some things there. Remember, we're here to create income streams that will help them bring money in to mitigate some of the issues with funding that we are seeing. So once we've got some ideas, we go, hey, these are plausible. Then we go on to the next one, and we then use the feasible. And you can see this poor little duck trying to climb over the log. You won't believe how many duck pictures I looked at to get these. And this one was really good because this is kind of the feasibility thing. So here we go back and we look at a team charter. Who's going to come and help with these projects? So we've got our ideas. We start looking at if we had to develop a product, what would it look like? We briefly, there's a strategies, high-level stuff there. Could we market this? In other words, will the people that we market it to, is it something that they want? So we start asking a couple of strategic key questions around here. We also then look internally a little bit here and say, how feasible is this to work as a business? So we go into what we call the business engine room, and we start looking at some of the numbers and the concepts within your organization to say, if we ran this, how would it work? Where will we put it? Where's other things? Do we have to buy this? Do we have to understand this? How are we going to get these things working? And is it going to work when we get to a point that we start making money and the people start queuing up outside? We do a little bit of financial projections. At this stage, it's purely a thumb suck, and it's a high-level thing to say, oh, we possibly, yeah, it's feasible that if we put more effort into it, we could actually get to a further product out of this thing. And then we look a little bit about compliance, and there comes in rules and regulations, because you can't now start serving food without certain rules, and you can't start certain industries without a couple of licenses and clearance, both internally and externally. We feed all that back to your board with a business strategy plan. It's not a business plan like, whoa, here we can go. It's more a strategy plan to say, hey, these things we think are feasible. They go back to the board. We get a big fat tick, and we're able to go ahead and take that forward. Then what we do, we go to the next stage, which is a little bit more exciting, because now we start peeling back the layers and we look at viability. And we can see the duck there, really pretty, because this is the part that we start to add all the makeup and the fluff and the fun part into this. Mostly the viability looks at making the product and the costing of that. So it's a viability, it's almost a financial viability, but it's also the product viability. Because sometimes we have ideas to make products that we realize we can't get the raw materials, especially now. A little hard to import things from China at the moment. And a little hard to go out shopping and get stuff down there. So we got to look at the raw materials, we look at the manufacturing process, and we look at the money thing. Now, the money thing, here's an interesting one. All of a sudden, this is one of the mindset shifts, is that typically an NPO will receive money and then spend that money or give that money out in services or products or projects. Now, all of a sudden, you're having to manufacture products out of raw materials that you've bought, and now you're applying things like markup based on costs and costs of raw product, electricity, consumables, and people's time. And now we've got a different mindset that goes out there about how do you price products, where typically you might be giving everything away in the past. Now all of a sudden you have to sell products, and you've got to learn the different pricing points and the pricing methodologies. So we kind of play around in that sandpit for a bit, and we make it look really smart. So now we say it is viable. It's something that can actually happen. And we can play around with these ideas. And now we sit there and say, hey, we've got some viable plans. But now it all comes down to the people. And here we're going to ask you another quiz in a moment here. So listen up. We're going to ask you now the capable. Are you capable? What is the capability of your team? Now, if you are doing a service or a product that your existing team cannot do, it's okay, because now you've got to go source those skills. Often those skills are sourced through your board at first, and then through volunteers and part-time staff, and then full-time staff. So we do look at the various options there. So we look at skills and we look at qualifications. And this is the point here, is that often we now need to start expanding your team. And with the expansion of team comes cost and all that HR stuff that goes with it. So often now we've got to go and interview people. We've got to look at that, because certain things cannot be done by people that haven't got the right qualifications, like electricity. And you don't want the guy who's like working in the garden now to come and make the food unless they've got specific skills and they've actually taught some chefing skills. And the same way as you don't want to put your kitchen staff out into the garden until they've got some kind of agricultural skills in there. So it's not just a matter of, say, all hands on deck like it is for normal NPOs. Yeah, I love NPO employment skills. There's that one clause there that says, this is your job description, and it could be pages and pages, and they always end off with that one sentence, doesn't it? It says that, and from time to time, you might be asked to do things outside the scope. And we don't necessarily want to put the wrong people doing these jobs. We want the right people doing the right things in the right way, because that then is going to give you the capability to compete in the open market with somebody else in the area that might be doing something similar. And then we also look at the equipment that you need. Now, equipment's equipment, but sometimes you need specialized equipment, garden equipment or cooking equipment or admin equipment or office chairs, tables, printers, laptops, anything that's required around the manufacturing, the production and the procurement of whatever you are going to sell. So it's a question here that we're going to look at, and are you capable of doing that? So here's a quick quiz again. 1 to 5. My team, 5 is my team is capable of expanding my business ideas into the future of where I've got, or a score of 1 is I'm really challenged in this area and we need to maybe sit down with my board and look at an HR plan and see looking at capability both with skills and equipment. Give us a quick skill. Oh, I love it. 3.5, well measured. Okay. 5, that's great. There's a 1. Okay, that's for Michelle. So yeah, pretty wide scope of things. Well done. Yeah. Okay. It's brilliant. So it's an interesting thing there, because so often we try push ourselves to the limit and we're doing things where we are not genius at, and then the job is not done right. And you know how drained you are when you get home after spending a day doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And you then fall back on that and go like, this is not a good idea. It's so much better spending the day doing things that you love and enjoy, because it actually energizes you. And you've got to get the capable people, getting the right people at the right time, doing the right things right, and making sure that we're there. Okay, so we've got quite a wide variety of scores there. That's great. The next thing we look at is, once we got the capability, we say, well, we've got the capacity, but can we achieve what needs to be done? So the next one is, are your goals achievable? So this time we set goals, and we've got look at short-term goals, long-term goals, medium goals around the business. And often these are milestone-based. You say, when are we going to launch? When are we going to have a pilot product? When can we do testing? When are we going to start rolling out? And often there's a soft launch with a hard launch, and then we've got certain goals for expansion and maybe other sites. And so we set out those milestones, and then we say, right, this is decision time. And this is where we need to bring the whole team together, because we need good, solid planning around it. And now we say, okay, we've got customers out there. Do we have access to them? How do we convert the potential customers to real customers? And how do we get our marketing strategies implemented? So we bring in all the social media and we look at the sales funnel, the sales pipeline, and the sales cycle. 3 tools that we utilize here. And in there, we develop a marketing strategy, because without clients, your business isn't going anywhere. So we bring in price points in here. We look at converting customers, holding on to customers, and creating future customers who are then raving fans. And that's the silver bullet for entrepreneurs, is to have raving fans. People are sitting there and they can't stop talking about it. Pretty much like this cute little duck on the side. He's a raving fan. You can see the look on his face is that, yeah, I'm going to buy, I'm going to spend, and that's all about achievability with that. Now your business is going. It's easy, 6 steps, and now we're up and running. This is where a lot of businesses get, and then they hit the brick wall, because now all of a sudden things like capacity kick in. And we get a big order, and then someone comes and we get opposition in the marketplace, and we go, no, why are these things there? Because we've only thought about the birth of the business. We haven't taken it forward in a long run. So the last one that we look at is your business sustainable? And you can see the list is long here. And this is an ongoing thing. This is where we come and accompany you on a journey over sometimes many months, if not years, where we look at the different levels of the business. And as your business grows, you're going to get different challenges. And as your business expands, you're going to get there. And as your customers change, and as you do diversification and expansion, and sometimes reduction because the world has changed, then we got to sit there and we got to go back to the plan, look at this stuff. And often raw material sources dry up and change, and prices go up, and we're in all these issues. These are ongoing coaching methodologies. So we've got to come up and down this list a number of times as we go there, as the challenges change and the world changes and the opportunities arise and the threats arise. We are then managing your business on an ongoing basis. So this is done at ground level as well as board level and getting that flow in between. It's no longer just running this project for a year and then writing a report for your AGM. It's an ongoing weekly, if not monthly, review of where we've got, looking at the profitability, looking at where the process and the procedures are running correctly. So we've got our 7 bills and with all the ducks. And now we've got our ducks in a row. We're going, now you see they're going the other way. So it's very important. I don't know why this duck has got so many babies. I thought that was she's clearly a preschool teacher. And getting maybe operating some youth program across the bottom of our screen there. So how do we do this? We're going to let Michelle then just speak through a couple of our tools that we have on offer.
Yeah, so just to give you a little brief outline of our process, we've developed our own canvas, a business development canvas that we use to walk an organization through the process of putting a business in place. And we like to put it in the colors and it looks all pretty, but we also have a structure in the back end where we're documenting these things. So you can see there are 12 steps, and typically we will try to work through 1 or 2 steps in a month process, or I should say a week. We see how quickly organizations can tackle those. It depends on people's availability and time and thinking process and so forth. But we go around the circle in order, looking at what it is that answers the question of what is your purpose and who is the customer and what is your unique product offering. And so we engage with each one of those one by one. Bruce, the next slide is our blueprint. This is just a graphic that we use to explain the business model that we use and what it is that we do. The 2 swords there serve a dual purpose. They represent Bruce and I, and you can see the different colors from our different points of view, but they also make it look like it's a shield and not just a circle. So that's our thing. We start with the middle one, which is putting the profit into non-profits, and that's really our slogan. It's our mandate. It's what we're all about. Then you'll see that the next ring is not a circle, it's a hexagonal, and that's because this ring represents the business activities that we are looking at engaging with, and typically they're a bit like a square peg in a round hole when it comes to non-profit setting. And so that's why it's a different shape. And so you can see there, we like our alliteration. Those are the various aspects that we engage with in the business to look at that within an organization. The next circle round are the areas, operational areas, I should say, that we look at in the organization itself. So we look at your impact in your projects and your structure and how that works. So the 2 inner circles kind of define the organization, our client, and the areas that we'll engage with you on them. And we do that in a process which is this really shiny silver one, which is we always start with review. We either look at where you're at, we look at your environment, or we look at what you're already doing if you're already doing something. Then we work with you to develop a strategy. And finally, we support your implementation of that strategy. And this depends entirely on the depth of the particular organization wants to go into. So if you're quite comfortable preparing a strategy that you just want us to cast our eyes over and support you really quite lightly with your implementation, that's perfectly fine. But if you want us to help you by giving you templates and writing procedures and really walking that journey with you and helping you to put the business in place, we can do that at a much deeper level. So we engage with those three steps at the level that the particular client is interested in. And that then leads me to wrapping it all up, which is our 3 business service offerings. The first one is a business development, where we work with you from scratch, looking at what business you want to get started. And that's really from that first slide that we showed about looking at your gearing and looking at your plausibility, what ideas you have, the business concept, right until launch and past that. Or we look at business improvement. Some of you are already running some kind of business, but you feel that you could improve it, you could focus it and really engage with it a lot more and it not just be a side hustle. Then the business improvement is the service that we offer to those kind of clients. And then finally, we have what's called operating model, where we look at the organization as a whole and see what is the best operating model for you as an organization and where can your operating model improve. And this is also where we tackle that inner circle, the NPO impact project structure, financial management circle, where we say, what are the areas of improvement that each one of those areas can benefit from? So we often do an assessment. The most common one is, can you please assess my financial functions to see that they are optimal? And that's where we'll do a review and we'll make recommendations for improved strategy, looking at the various aspects of your operating model independently. So that gives you a little idea of who we are and what we stand for and the way that we can support you guys as organizations. And this is the best slide of them all. I really think that this sort of sums up the webinar. That image is just iconic. Diving straight head first into the water on this enormous duck that you know is going to disintegrate as soon as it hits the water. We don't want to undervalue the skills and the capacity that you guys have as leaders in the sector, but we do find that it definitely helps to do it with somebody, to bounce ideas, to be held accountable, to be that support, and to be able to provide that expert experience to the process means that the process is more likely to be fast-tracked. Business strategy sat on the board agenda for the last 10 years and never moved. We will make it happen. And also that you're held accountable to moving things forward and holding that process. We spoke about the mindset and being able to have that alternative perspective to your NPO mindset is a very valuable thing. So this is how you can get hold of us. On our website, you can complete a contact form and we'll add you to the database and you can get our emails or send one of us an email directly. The Facebook group there is at the bottom. Please join our Facebook group. I'm regularly checking to see if there's anybody who needs to be accepted as members, and we'll post stuff on there. And then also we would very much like to engage with you on a Monday. So the NPO Cloud meets every single Monday at 12 o'clock. If you just drop us an email and say you'd like to get that link or have a look on the Facebook group, we very much, we post that quite regularly to give you the meeting link. It's the same meeting link every week. And it's just a discussion group where we're like-minded NPO leaders are talking about a topic. We share experiences. Sometimes we have an expert come and share their knowledge with us. But we really are just building a tribe of people who can support each other, because we realize that, as the previous slide said, you can't do this alone. And we're not the only support that is there. There are people who have walked this journey and have been through this. I see there was somebody there from St. Luke's who's, their stores have been going for many, many years. come visit us on a Monday and share with us your learnings and support each other, and we can become a tribe of people taking this journey together.